What if I told you that a single fortune cookie could reveal that your entire life has been a lie, and the person you've been calling mom for 28 years is actually your kidnapper? This is the unbelievable true story of how Sarah Chin discovered that she was the victim of one of the most elaborate child abduction schemes in American history, and how one random moment of curiosity led to the exposure of a criminal network that had been stealing children for decades. Sarah had always felt slightly different from her family, but she attributed it to normal generational differences. Her parents, Linda and Robert Chin, had immigrated from Taiwan before she was born, and Sarah assumed that her occasional feelings of disconnect were simply due to cultural differences between her American upbringing and her parents' traditional values. She had always been grateful for the sacrifices her parents had made to give her a good life in America, and she worked hard to make them proud. At 28, Sarah was a successful software developer living in Seattle, engaged to her college sweetheart David, and planning a wedding for the following spring. She had a close relationship with her parents, who still lived in the small Oregon town where she had grown up, and she visited them regularly. Her life was exactly what she had always wanted: stable, successful, and filled with people she loved. The revelation that would destroy everything she thought she knew about herself came on an ordinary Tuesday evening in March. Sarah was working late at her office and decided to order Chinese food for dinner. When the delivery arrived, she opened her fortune cookie and read the message inside: "Your past holds secrets that will change your future." It was a generic fortune that could apply to anyone, but something about it made Sarah curious enough to do something she had never done before. Sarah had always been interested in genealogy and had been meaning to explore her family history for years. Inspired by the fortune cookie message, she decided to finally submit a DNA sample to one of the popular ancestry websites. She was excited about the possibility of connecting with distant relatives and learning more about her family's history in Taiwan. The results that came back 6 weeks later made no sense. According to the DNA analysis, Sarah was not of Chinese or Taiwanese descent at all. Instead, her genetic makeup indicated that she was primarily of Korean ancestry, with some Japanese heritage. Sarah's first assumption was that there had been a mistake with the testing, so she submitted samples to 2 other companies to verify the results. When all 3 tests came back with the same results, Sarah began to panic. She confronted her parents about the discrepancy, but they insisted that there must be an error with the testing. They showed her documents that appeared to prove her birth in Taiwan and her legal adoption by them when she was a baby. They explained that they had adopted her from an orphanage in Taipei after years of trying to have children of their own. However, Sarah's growing suspicions led her to dig deeper. She hired a private investigator to help her trace her origins and verify the adoption paperwork. What the investigator discovered was shocking. There was no record of any adoption from Taiwan matching Sarah's description or timeline. The documents her parents had shown her were sophisticated forgeries, but they were not authentic legal papers. The investigation revealed that Sarah's real name was Kim Min-young, and she had been born in Seoul, South Korea, in 1995. When she was 3 years old, she had been playing in a park with her grandmother when she was abducted by a woman who matched Linda Chen's description. The Korean police had investigated the disappearance extensively, but the trail had gone cold when it appeared that the child had been taken out of the country. Sarah's real parents, Park Sung-ho and Kim Hae-jin, had never stopped looking for their daughter. They had worked with international law enforcement agencies, hired private investigators, and maintained a website with updated age progression photos of what their daughter might look like as she grew older. They had even traveled to several countries following up on leads, but they had never found any trace of her. The private investigators' research revealed that Linda and Robert Chin were not actually married and were not even related to each other. They were part of a sophisticated child trafficking network that specialized in stealing children from Asian countries and selling them to families in the United States who wanted to adopt but were unable to go through legitimate channels. The network operated by targeting children in crowded public places, often parks or shopping centers, where they could be easily separated from their guardians. The children were then taken to safe houses where they were given new identities and taught basic English before being transported to the United States. The network had been operating for over 30 years and had successfully trafficked hundreds of children from Korea, China, Thailand, and other Asian countries. Linda Chen, whose real name was Margaret Thompson, had been working as a nurse in Seattle when she was recruited by the trafficking network. She had been unable to have children of her own and had been rejected by legitimate adoption agencies due to psychological issues in her background. The network offered her the opportunity to have a child in exchange for her help in transporting and caring for other trafficked children. Robert Chen, whose real name was James Sullivan, had been recruited separately as a technical expert who helped create false documentation for the trafficked children. He had met Linda through the network, and they had agreed to pose as a married couple to provide a more convincing family environment for Sarah while also serving as a hub for the trafficking operation. Sarah's childhood home in Oregon had actually been a way station for the trafficking network. While Sarah was growing up, dozens of other stolen children had passed through the house, staying for a few weeks or months before being placed with other families or moved to different locations. Sarah had been told that these children were distant relatives visiting from Taiwan, and she had never suspected that they were actually victims of the same crime that had been committed against her. The investigation revealed that the trafficking network had been incredibly sophisticated in its operations. They had contacts within various government agencies who helped them obtain false documentation. They had medical professionals who would alter children's appearances through minor surgical procedures or dental work to make them less recognizable. They even had teachers who would work with the children to help them learn English and American cultural norms before they were placed with their new families. The network had been operating with virtual impunity for decades because they were extremely careful about selecting their victims and their customers. They targeted children from families who were unlikely to have the resources to pursue international investigations, and they sold the children to families who were desperate enough to pay enormous sums of money and ask no questions about the legitimacy of the adoptions. Sarah's case broke the network wide open because she was the first victim who had grown up to discover the truth and had the resources and determination to pursue justice. The DNA testing that had revealed her true origins was technology that hadn't existed when she was a child, and the trafficking network had not anticipated that their victims would be able to use such technology to uncover the truth decades later. The FBI investigation that followed Sarah's discovery was massive and international in scope. Working with law enforcement agencies in Korea, China, Thailand, and other countries, they were able to identify and arrest over 50 people involved in the trafficking network. The investigation revealed that the network had trafficked over 800 children over 30 years, generating millions of dollars in profits for the criminals involved. Linda and Robert Chen were arrested and charged with kidnapping, child trafficking, conspiracy, and numerous other crimes. During their trial, it was revealed that they had been paid over $200,000 for taking Sarah and had received additional payments over the years for their work with the trafficking network. They showed no remorse for their crimes and continued to insist that they had provided Sarah with a better life than she would have had in Korea. The emotional impact on Sarah was devastating. She had to come to terms with the fact that the people she had called parents for her entire life were actually criminals who had stolen her from her real family. Every memory of her childhood was now tainted by the knowledge that it had all been built on a lie. She struggled with feelings of betrayal, anger, and confusion about her identity. The reunion with her real parents was both joyful and heartbreaking. Park Sung-ho and Kim Hae-jin had aged considerably during the 25 years they had spent searching for their daughter, and they had to rebuild their relationship with Sarah from scratch. Sarah had to learn Korean and reconnect with her original culture while also processing the trauma of discovering that her entire life had been a lie. The legal proceedings were complex and emotionally draining. Sarah had to testify in multiple trials, reliving the trauma of her discovery over and over again. She also had to work with international authorities to help identify other victims of the trafficking network and assist in the prosecution of the criminals involved. The case led to significant changes in how international adoption agencies operate and how authorities investigate suspected child trafficking cases. Sarah's story highlighted the vulnerabilities in the international adoption system and led to new regulations requiring more thorough background checks and documentation verification. Sarah's experience also contributed to advances in using DNA technology to solve cold cases involving missing children. Her case demonstrated how genetic genealogy could be used to identify victims of trafficking and connect them with their biological families, even decades after the crimes were committed. Today, Sarah divides her time between Seattle and Seoul, maintaining relationships with both her biological family and the life she built in America. She has become an advocate for missing children and works with organizations that help reunite families separated by trafficking and other crimes. She has also worked to raise awareness about the signs of child trafficking and the importance of reporting suspicious activities to authorities. Sarah's fiancé David stood by her throughout the entire ordeal, and they eventually married in a ceremony that included both her biological family from Korea and the friends she had made during her life in America. The wedding was a celebration of her resilience and her ability to build a new identity that honored both her past and her future. The most important lesson from Sarah's story is that the truth has a way of emerging, even when it has been buried for decades. Her accidental discovery through DNA testing not only gave her the opportunity to reconnect with her real family but also led to justice for hundreds of other victims of the trafficking network. Her courage in pursuing the truth despite the personal cost has helped prevent future crimes and has given hope to other families who are still searching for their missing children. Sarah often reflects on how different her life might have been if she had never opened that fortune cookie or decided to submit her DNA for testing. While the discovery of the truth was traumatic, she is grateful that she was able to expose the criminals who had stolen her childhood and help bring justice to other victims of the trafficking network. Her story serves as a reminder that sometimes the most random moments can lead to the most important discoveries, and that it's never too late to seek the truth, no matter how painful it might be.